It's morning for you, evening for me. So very happy to be having this chance again to talk about the 7-point mind training. So this is our seventh talk in this series of talks on the 7-point mind training. And last week we started to look at point 3 of the 7 points. And point 3 is called transforming adverse circumstances into the path. So what this means is when we face problems, difficulties, suffering, bad things happen to us in our life, we don't have to see them as bad. Normally we do. Normally we feel, oh, this is terrible. Why does this have to happen? I don't want this to happen. And we do everything we can to get rid of it, to make it go away. So that's our usual way of reacting to problems. But in these teachings, we're told that problems are not necessarily bad things that we have to push away from ourselves or try to get away from them, run away from them. But instead, there are ways we can transform these difficulties, these problems, such that they become part of the path, part of our spiritual training, our spiritual path, helping us to have greater compassion, loving kindness, wisdom, patience, many of the positive qualities that we actually need to be able to progress along the path. So that we started looking at that last week, and I talked a little bit about it, and I thought that it would be nice to do some meditation to start the class tonight, to do some meditation on this idea and see how it can be used. And then we'll go on. There's a bit more information about this topic of transforming adverse circumstances. And then we'll see, we might have time to get into the next topic, which is the 5 powers. Okay, so we'll start with some meditation, and we'll start with a few minutes of just sitting quietly to settle down our minds, and then generate a positive motivation for what we're doing to make the best of it. And then we'll go into the actual meditation. So I invite you to make yourselves comfortable, but that doesn't mean lying down and lounging. It just means that when we meditate, we should try to be in a comfortable position. If you're sitting with your legs crossed, make sure that your legs are in a position that's comfortable and it's not going to cause you a lot of pain after a few minutes. So have your legs crossed comfortably. Or if you're sitting in a chair, make sure you're comfortable, but it's also good to keep your back straight. So often chairs have a slanted back. So if we're leaning back against the chair, then our back is actually not straight. It's crooked. So when we meditate, it's best if we can keep our back straight. So sit up straight, but at the same time, don't let your shoulders be tight. Let your shoulders relax. You have your hands resting in your lap. In the Tibetan tradition, we put our hands in our lap with the right hand on top of the left hand. The palms are facing upwards and the 2 thumbs are touching. But if you've learned another way of putting your hands when you meditate, it's okay to use that. And you can close your eyes if you wish, but in the Tibetan tradition, it's recommended that we leave our eyes open just a little bit and have our eyes looking down onto whatever's in front of us, our table or our lap. And that way, there's a little bit of light coming into your eyes that can help you to stay awake and alert and not sleepy. but your eyes are not open so much that you see lots of things that would distract you. So if you can have your eyes open a little bit that way, that's good. But if that's too difficult, too uncomfortable, it is okay to close your eyes, but just try to make sure you stay awake. Try not to fall asleep when meditating. Okay, so bring your awareness into your body. Feel your body sitting where it is, and see if you can feel your breath flowing in and out. And for a few minutes, just be aware of the breath as it's coming in, then going out, and then in, and so on. Just let the breath be natural. Don't force your breathing. Just allow your body to breathe. Just with your mind, with your awareness, be aware of, observe the natural rhythm of the breath flowing in and out. So doing this is actually really helpful to settle our mind down in the present. Often our mind is wandering to the past, to the future, to other places with lots of thoughts. So when we're watching our breath is happening in the present moment, present place, right here, right now. So naturally our mind is in the present. So just let go of any thoughts of the past or the future or other places. Just let them go, put them aside. Just let your mind settle down in the present by watching the breath coming in and going out. Now let's spend a few more minutes generating a positive motivation for what we're doing here during this session. So we're going to do some meditation and then learning more about this topic of thought transformation, mind training. So it's best if we can do this with a motivation that is thinking of others, concerned about others, and not just about me, my happiness. I mean, of course, we do wish for happiness and wish to be free of problems. And it's good to work on freeing ourselves from problems and their causes. But it's good if we can open up our mind and our heart wider and think about others as well. Understand that everybody else, all the other people in the world, all the other beings are basically just like me. They want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. And we can help them. There's certain things we can do now to help others. And as we develop ourselves further along the path, our ability to help others will increase more and more. And eventually, if we develop ourselves to the highest degree, reach the state of enlightenment, Buddhahood, then we can help others, all beings, in the best possible way. Help them be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, help them achieve happiness, and the causes of happiness, help them reach enlightenment as well. So that's actually the goal of the Mahayana path, which these teachings are part of. So if you're comfortable with the idea, see if you can bring that into your mind. Think that you're listening to these teachings, doing this meditation with a long-term goal of reaching enlightenment to help all living beings. And in the meantime, like the short-term goal is just being helpful to others as much as we can as we progress towards enlightenment, starting from now. So just see if you can think that way, feel that way, that you'd like to learn something here tonight or during this session that will help you be more helpful to others and to the world. So now for the main part of the meditation, which is on how to transform adverse circumstances into the path. So think of a problem that you are experiencing now. So it could be something physical, you might have some pain, some illness, some physical problem. Or it could be something more emotional. Maybe you're feeling unhappy about something, worried about something, angry at someone, having some kind of conflict with another person. You might have many problems going on right now. Just choose one, and maybe better not to choose your biggest problem, something that's really huge. If you've never done this meditation before, it might be better to start with a smaller or medium-sized problem. And just in case you don't have any problems right now, then imagine one. Imagine some problem that might happen to you in the next few days, in the next week. So once you've thought of the problem, look at how your mind reacts to it. Try to recognize if you feel unhappy about this problem, maybe even angry about it. Why does this have to happen to me? Or maybe you're worried, anxious, or feeling depressed, or feeling hopeless. Maybe thinking the problem is going to be there forever, will never go away. So if you do notice any of those attitudes, those reactions in your mind, ask yourself, does it help to have those kinds of thoughts and feelings? Does this make things better? Does it bring a solution to the problem or relief from the problem? Or do they just make things worse? Exacerbate the problem, make it bigger. Like Buddha mentioned, shooting yourself with another arrow. So if you can recognize that these kinds of thoughts, feelings, reactions are not helpful, understand that you do have a choice. You don't have to let your mind get caught up in or carried away by those thoughts or feelings. You can do other things with your mind. You can learn other ways of dealing with problems and difficulties such that you don't end up feeling unhappy, worried, depressed, and so on. So the idea here in these teachings is problems, difficulties are not necessarily bad. It all depends on how we look at them, what we do with them, how we react to them. And with the right methods, with the right tools, we can actually transform problems into the path, meaning we can make them part of our Dharma practice. And they can help us develop positive qualities, which we need to develop along the path, like love, compassion, wisdom, patience, and so on. And we can also create merit, positive energy that, again, helps us progress along the path. Also, if we use these techniques, we'll probably find that our mind is in a better state, more calm, peaceful, maybe even happy, joyful, rather than unhappy, miserable. So let's look at one method that we can use. And this involves understanding that we're not the only person in the world who has such a problem. When we have a problem, we sometimes feel alone, as if I'm the only person in the world who's got this problem. Everybody else is happy, everyone else is doing well. Only me has this problem. So then we feel kind of very alone, cut off from others. But that's actually not true. We're not the only person who has a problem like this. Many other people do. So just think about that. There might be people you actually know or people you've heard of, or you can just use your imagination and just think about many people in the world have a similar problem, maybe exactly the same as you have or something similar. You might even be able to think of people who have this problem to an even greater degree than you do, even worse than yours. So thinking in that way already can bring some relief because we realize we're not alone. And we realize that our problem may not be as bad as some other people's problem. It might seem smaller, more manageable. But also thinking in this way is the doorway to compassion. Compassion is when we understand the suffering, the problems of others, and we feel moved, we feel touched, we want to help them. So see if you can generate compassion for the other people who have a problem that is similar to yours, because you can understand how they feel. You have this problem too, so you know what it's like for them. So that means you can have empathy for them and compassion for them. See if you can feel that way. If it's difficult, you could just say to yourself, yeah, I know what it's like, and I really wish those people could be free of this suffering. How nice it would be if they didn't have to have this problem. And then you can also say to yourself, I would like to learn how to deal with this problem in myself, learn how to manage it so that it doesn't bring me down, make me unhappy. And then I'll be in a better position to be able to help other people who have this kind of problem. So thinking that way can give you some courage, some energy, enthusiasm to learn ways of managing your problems so you can help others do the same. And another method that can help us to transform problems is to remind ourselves of impermanence. So impermanence means change. It means that things are subject to change. So that includes just about everything in our life, everything around us, our own bodies, the bodies of others, all the material things in the world around us, all our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences, all the events that happen. So all of these things are impermanent. They're changing all the time. That's just their nature. They don't stay the same from one moment to the next. So we can apply that to a problem, because when we do have a problem, we might have the sense that it's going to last forever. It's going to be there forever. It's never going to go away. We don't probably think this deliberately or consciously, but it might just be a kind of subtle feeling we have, as if, oh no, I'm going to feel like this forever. It's going to be like this forever. It's never going to change. And thinking that way just makes things worse. We feel much more unhappy and upset and worried. But actually, it's not true. No problem lasts forever. Problems are changeable. They do change. They will change. They don't stay the same. And one day they will be gone. They won't be there anymore. So if you have trouble believing that, you could just think of problems you had in the past, things that you got really worried about or upset about. And now those problems are gone. They're not there anymore. So if you can see that, if you can recognize that, you can remind yourself that this present problem will also disappear one day. Okay, so you can now open your eyes, come out of meditation. Okay, so in that meditation, we thought of a couple of uh, ways that we can look at problems in a different way, different than how we normally do, and can help our mind stay peaceful and positive, but also help cultivate qualities, positive qualities that help us progress along the path. And the book Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun that I'm using as the kind of commentary for this teaching mainly talks about doing the Tonglen, or taking and giving practice. So we talked about that earlier a few weeks ago. So that's a really excellent practice to do, using the problem to think of the problems, the suffering of others, and then imagine taking the suffering of others onto ourselves, onto our own problem, and then we're experiencing it for them, experiencing it on behalf of them. So by that, by me experiencing this problem or this suffering, may all those other people and beings be free of their suffering. And then we can also imagine giving all our good energy, our merit, our good qualities, and so on to others, and it becomes what they need to be happy. So that's a really excellent practice if you can do it. But some people who are maybe new to these teachings and these practices might find it difficult to do the Tonglen. So other practices like impermanence, what we just did, that's a really helpful one, just to remind ourselves that everything's impermanent. This problem is impermanent. It's not going to last forever. It's going to change and go away one day. So that helps our mind to be more calm, more relaxed about it, not so upset. Another thing that's helpful is thinking in terms of karma. If you are able to believe in karma and accept karma, so there you would think, well, this problem is happening to me because I created some karma in the past to experience this. Usually bad karma. Problems are the result of bad karma, negative karma. So in the past, I did something harmful, something negative. I harmed others, and that's why this is happening to me. So now I can see, oh, this is what happens if I hurt others, if I do bad things. And I don't like this happening. So I really want to make sure that in the future, I don't create any more of this kind of karma. So you then make a very strong determination from now on. I will try as much as I can to avoid creating negative karma and create good karma, virtuous karma as much as I can. So the problem then becomes like a lesson in karma. Now, some of these things might take a while. You need to think about them for a while to really get the point. But they're very, very helpful. Very, very helpful. So that's how, by looking at a problem in the perspective of Dharma, some kind of Dharma teaching, helps us deepen our understanding of that teaching, and also deepen our conviction in that teaching, and deepen our determination to continue practicing the Dharma. The problems can be very, very helpful for our spiritual practice. Also, refuge, just taking refuge. So refuge means we trust the Buddha and his teachings and the Sangha, the three jewels of refuge, and we take them as our guides in the way that we live our life. We want to follow the Buddhist teachings in the way we live our life. And ideally, we understand why we take refuge in the Buddha, that he was someone who was once like ourselves. He was just an ordinary person, and he had problems and difficulties. But he worked very hard to understand what are the causes of suffering, what are the causes of problems, which are basically delusions, afflictive emotions like greed, hatred, and ignorance, and also karma, negative actions done under the influence of afflictive emotions. And he found a way to overcome the causes of suffering, to free himself, free his mind from the causes of suffering, and develop all the positive qualities to the point of being enlightened. So ideally we understand, this is what the Buddha did, and so he knows how to be free of suffering. He knows how to overcome problems once and for all. So we take him as our guide to do the same, to follow in his footsteps. So when we're facing a problem, we can think of the Buddha and think, okay, he faced problems too in his path, on his way to enlightenment, and he managed to find ways to overcome them. And sometimes it's difficult to find our own way out of problems, but thinking of the Buddha and praying to the Buddha, asking help and guidance of the Buddha, kind of like talking to the Buddha in your mind, that can be really helpful. For one thing, you feel like you're not totally alone having to face this problem. Buddha's there and he knows what's going on with you and understands and has compassion. So just doing that, taking refuge in the Buddha, praying to the Buddha, asking help from the Buddha, sometimes that will help your mind to clear up, and then you'll be able to see what you need to do yourself to overcome your problem, to deal with your problem. So that's something that could help as well. And so then again, facing a problem or a difficulty in your life is a way of increasing your refuge in the Buddha, strengthening your faith and your refuge in the Buddha and your determination to follow his teachings. And then renunciation, which means the determination to free ourselves from samsara, cyclic existence, this whole situation we are in, where we are not enlightened, we have not attained liberation or enlightenment. So we die and are reborn again and again and again. We have confusion, delusions, karma, and so on. So this situation we are in, samsara, it's in the nature of suffering. As long as we're in samsara, we're going to experience suffering and problems. So somebody who really understands samsara, how it's in the nature of suffering. So when bad things happen, they don't feel surprised. So they wouldn't feel surprised about the pandemic that we're having right now. I mean, that's just normal. I heard in 9/11, when I don't forget what year that was, 2001 or 2002, when the terrorists flew planes into the two towers in New York City, and that was the start of a lot of big problems in the world. Anyway, it was a pretty for me and for many other people, it was a really shocking thing that happened. And I heard this story that Lama Lundrup, some of you probably know Lama Lundrup, who is the abbot of Kopan Monastery, visited Singapore a number of times and taught there. So when a student told him about what had happened, about the planes flying into the two towers, he just remained calm. He didn't look shocked, just had a kind of normal expression, and he just said, "That's samsara." And when I heard that story, I felt kind of shocked by his reaction, and I thought, wow, doesn't he realize how terrible that was and how many people died and how much suffering there was? And then I thought about how his own experience. He went to Sera Monastery in Tibet. That was his monastery in Tibet. And he would have been there in 1959 when the Chinese Communist Army sent missiles into Sera Monastery. So they destroyed many buildings, and many monks were killed, and many others, ran away, fled, and crossed over the mountains and went into India. So he would have been there. He would have had that experience of being in Sera Monastery, having the bombs falling, the missiles falling, and people killed and so on. So he had that kind of experience. So I thought, oh, so his reaction to the story of the Twin Towers was not a case of being indifferent, apathy, not caring, not understanding what happened, but instead was simply knowing that we're in samsara. And as long as we are in samsara, then there will be these kind of problems happening again and again. It's just the nature of samsara. And so understanding that helps you to not be so shocked and upset when problems do happen. And instead, you generate this strong determination to be free of samsara, to get out of samsara, not stay. We tend to have a lot of attachment to samsara because we like all the pleasures of samsara. But if you really understand that samsara is full of pain, full of problems, full of difficulties, and even the pleasure doesn't last very long. It's impermanent, it's transient. So then you develop this attitude of renunciation, disillusionment, disenchantment with samsara, and the determination to free yourself from samsara, to get yourself out of this situation by cultivating the right qualities, mainly ethics, living very ethically, and concentration and wisdom. So you really dedicate yourself to getting out of samsara, freeing yourself. And then that in turn becomes the basis for bodhicitta, realizing that, oh, I shouldn't only free myself from samsara, but I have to help everybody else. All these other beings were suffering too. So then that gives you very strong determination to develop your bodhicitta and practice the path, the 6 perfections, and reach enlightenment. So whenever problems happen, then we can use the problem to contemplate these points of the Dharma and increase our understanding of them and our determination to follow the path, practice the path. So these are just different ways that we can use problems and difficulties to enhance our practice and cultivate positive qualities. So that's the meaning of transforming problems, transforming adverse conditions into the path. And there's more methods you can find in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's book, which is called Transforming Problems into Happiness. I think that's what it's called. And I mentioned another book last week called No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's also a very nice book on this topic. Okay, so using these methods to transform problems into the path doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to find a solution to the problem. Okay, so if there is a solution to the problem, then of course we try to apply that solution. Like if you're sick, you go to the doctor, you go through whatever medical treatment, medical procedures you can to cure yourself of your illness. Or if there's, problem in a relationship with somebody else, if somebody's being mean to you, doing harmful things to you and so on, you don't have to just put up with that. You can find some solution, get yourself away from that person, try to talk to them, or even call the police if they're really doing something harmful. But by using these methods, it just enables our mind to be more calm, to be more clear, not so angry or upset, And then when our mind is more calm and clear, we can think more clearly. You know, we can analyze the situation and think, okay, what would be the best thing to do in this situation? What's the wisest thing to do? And we can do this with, yeah, a calm state of mind and a positive state of mind, thinking about what would be the most beneficial thing for me, for others, for everyone in this situation. So I'm just saying that because, you know, this point about transforming problems doesn't mean we just have to sit there and suffer with this problem and not do anything about it. We can take steps to solve the problem, to free ourselves from the problem, but we're doing it with a more positive state of mind. And then, you know, sometimes it does take a while for the problem to be solved. So it might still be there for a while before it does go away. So while it's still there, we can use these other methods to use it in the path, transform it into the path. Okay, because Shantideva, in his guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, there's one verse in there. I'm just paraphrasing it, but he says, if a problem can be solved, there's no point to be upset about it. So, you know, solve it. Do what you can to solve the problem and don't just sit around being unhappy and upset. On the other hand, if the problem can't be solved, there's also no reason to be unhappy or upset. You know, that's not going to help. That's not going to make things better. It's just going to make things worse. We're going to be unhappy on top of having this problem. So it's better to just accept it. Okay, this is happening and there's nothing that I can do. So better to just accept it. Just worrying, being unhappy, being upset, feeling sorry for ourselves, getting angry at others. Those kind of thoughts, those kind of reactions aren't helpful, and they just make things worse. It's like shooting ourselves with more and more arrows. Also, there's always something we can do. Even if we can't stop the problem or solve the problem, there are things we can do mentally about our mind, our attitude. There's also prayer. Pray for help. Pray to Tara, pray to Buddha for help. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes that works. So there's always something you can do when there's a problem. But just try not to let your mind get caught up in negative thoughts and feelings and attitudes. Just that those do not help. Just make things worse. Then so that's this point about transforming adverse circumstances into the path actually had two parts to it. The first part was doing this by thought, by our thinking, and so that's what we've covered so far. And so that means just working on our mind, working on our thoughts, bringing about changes in our mind and our thoughts. Oh yeah, there's one more part here that mentioned in the mind training, like the rays of the sun. If you have the book, it's on the bottom of page 82, 83. So it also talks about how when things are going well in our life, we're not having big problems, but you know, we're happy, we're healthy, we have everything we need, food, clothes, house, friends, spiritual teachers. So good conditions, good things are going, you know, happening in our life. So in that kind of situation, the author says, we should remember that these good conditions are the result of merit or virtue, good karma that we created in the past. And if we want to continue having these kind of good experiences in the future, we have to make sure we create virtue and merit now on the basis of pure ethics. So this is important to remember because people who don't understand this, when they are having good experiences in their life, they're enjoying wealth, prosperity, health, have lots of friends and supporters and so on and so forth, then it's possible that they could become somewhat arrogant You know, they could feel very proud of themselves. Wow, I'm so great. I'm so fantastic. And also maybe complacent. Maybe they just take it for granted that they have all these good things, and they may feel as if, well, it's going to be like this forever. You know, it's never going to change. I'm going to always have these good conditions, and not do anything to create more virtue, more merit, more good karma to continue having such good things in the future. And sometimes people in such conditions even use their wealth and their power and their position in harmful ways. They might lie, cheat, be dishonest, harm others, or mistreat others, and so on. So that means they're creating non-virtue. They're creating bad karma, and the bad karma they're creating will lead to problems in the future, such as losing their wealth, losing these good conditions. So this is very sad when this kind of thing happens. So there's a teaching here that we have to make sure that if we want to have good conditions in the future, this life, future lives, and so on, we have to create the causes for it. Things happen because of causes, not just because of good luck or any other reason, just because we want them to happen. We have to create the causes, which is merit, virtue, good karma. Okay. Okay, so far then, this is the how to transform adverse conditions into the path by way of thought. And then the second main point is transforming adverse conditions into the path by way of action or certain practices. So the next line of the root text, the 7-point mind training, says, the supreme method is accompanied by the 4 practices. So this is referring to, you know, this practice of transforming adverse conditions into the path by actions. So there are these 4 practices. 4 practices which we need to do. And so the first one is accumulating merit. So that's basically what I was just talking about, you know, that if we want to avoid bad circumstances in the future and have good circumstances, you know, a healthy body, resources, food and house and friends and good conditions, not just to enjoy ourselves, not just to have a good time, but as a spiritual practitioner, we want to have good conditions so that we can practice. Because if you're starving, if you're living on the streets, you know, if you don't have any friends or supporters or spiritual teachers, then it's very hard to practice. So if we want to continue practicing, following the path, we have to have the right circumstances in our life. And so that depends on creating merit, creating virtue. Okay, so that's the first of these 4 practices, accumulating merit. So there's many practices for accumulating merit. For example, just trying to generate bodhicitta, what we're learning about in this text, generating the good heart, the kind heart, caring for others, loving kindness, compassion, wanting to help others as much as we can, wanting to reach enlightenment, to help others in the best way. So just whatever energy we put into generating bodhicitta, that's creating so much merit, so much virtue, so much good karma. And also just learning about any other aspect of the path, learning about the lamrim, the stages of the path. Okay, so any effort we put into studying and thinking about, meditating on any of the teachings of the Buddha, of the path to enlightenment, this is an excellent way to accumulate merit. Other practices could be making offerings, such as if there's an altar in your house or in the temple, bringing flowers, fruits, and so on and so forth. Also mental offerings. We can offer things mentally, even if we can't do them physically. Just imagine beautiful offerings and offer them to the Buddha. Reciting prayers, mantras, sutras, doing meditation, helping others, donating to charity. Also rejoicing, the practice of rejoicing, which involves, it's kind of easy to do because if you look at, you see other people creating merit, doing good things, or you hear about people doing good things and you feel happy. You think, how wonderful. I rejoice in what they're doing. It's wonderful that they are doing that. So just by doing that, you create merit, you create virtue. So it's kind of an easy way, easy way to create virtue, merit. But of course, our motivation is important with any of these activities. We always try to have the altruistic motivation of wanting to help others, wanting to benefit the world, and ideally wanting to become enlightened, to help all living beings. And then dedicating the merit we create to enlightenment. Okay, so this is a very important part of our practice, of our path to enlightenment. Bodhisattvas do lots of activities to accumulate merit for many lifetimes, many eons to reach enlightenment. The second of the four practices is purifying negativity. So this is kind of the complementary practice. We need to build up merit, good karma, virtue, good energy, but we also need to clear away the negative energy that we've created in the past, or maybe still creating in the present. So whatever negative actions we do, non-virtuous actions we do, like breaking vows, precepts that we may have taken, or doing any of the 10 non-virtuous actions. So anything we do, body, speech, mind, that's negative, that's wrong, that's non-virtuous, it's important to do purification of that. Otherwise, we will face problems, difficulties in the future. And also that negative energy becomes a hindrance, an obstacle to our progressing on the path. So the best way to purify is using the 4 powers, which I'll just mention. Probably most of you know them, but and there's different ways of explaining them. I like to use 4 R's. The power of regret. First one is regret, which just means recognizing that you did something that was wrong, that was unwise, unskillful. You regret doing it. You're sorry you did it. You know, so it's just a conscious, intelligent recognition that something you did wasn't right. And you want to confess and purify that. The second is refuge. Well, that's for Buddhist. For Buddhist, it means renewing our refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the 3 jewels. If you're not a Buddhist, then there may be other objects that you take refuge in, other spiritual beings, or people who don't have any religion at all. Then you probably have certain values that you try to live by in your life. Like, for example, I want to be an honest person. I want to, you know, be honest and not harmful, not harm others. So there's certain ideals or values that you regard as important and you want to live your life according to, but we sometimes break those, we go against those. So this second of the 4 powers is just to remind ourselves of those values, bring ourselves back on the path that we want to follow, renewing our commitment to those values, to those ideals. So in Buddhism, this involves renewing our refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and our commitment to following the Buddha's teachings, and particularly living compassionately, ethically, non-harmfully, helping others rather than harming them. So it's just reminding ourselves of how we want to live, how we want to be. The third of the four powers is remedy. And this involves doing something positive, virtuous, constructive to counteract the negative energy we created. So here you can do just about any virtuous action, like giving a donation to charity, doing volunteer work to help others, reciting prayers, mantras, sutras, meditating on loving kindness or meditating on emptiness. But there's certain practices that are specifically good, such as mantra Vajrasattva, reciting that mantra that's particularly good for purification. Or another one is the practice of the 35 Buddhas, visualizing those 35 Buddhas, doing prostration to them, reciting their names. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that because most people probably know these practices. But anyway, they do say in general, any virtuous action, any good deed can be used as this third power. And then the fourth power is promise or resolution. This is where we just make the promise to do the very best we can, to not do that action again. If it's something you could promise to never do again, I will never, ever, ever do that again, and that you can keep such a promise, then you can do that. But if it's something that you probably can't totally stop right away, then you could make a promise for a limited period of time, like 1 day or even 1 hour or even 5 minutes. I'm not going to do that for the next 5 minutes. So, so if you keep doing that, you keep refraining from that action for short periods of time, you get used to not doing it. And then gradually you can increase that amount of time and eventually get to where you almost never do it. Or maybe you get to where you don't do it at all, never do it again. So we do need to have some kind of commitment to stopping that kind of action rather than just going and doing it again and again and again. So those are the four powers. So it's best if we can to do a practice of purification every day, like at the end of the day is the best time before going to sleep. Think back over your day. Did I do anything negatives, anything I need to purify? And most probably you did. Then do some practice of Vajrasattva or 35 Buddhas, or if you don't have a whole lot of time, take refuge in the Buddha and recite the Buddha's mantra a number of times. And then the third of the four powers is called, is making offerings to spirits and other beings who try to harm us. So the idea here is that we sometimes encounter beings that might be harmful to us. They could be, ghosts or spirits. But they could be human beings or animals, mosquitoes, cats, dogs that disturb us. So anytime we encounter other beings that could be disturbing to us, ideally we don't get angry at them and generate negative attitudes towards them, but instead maintain our compassionate, loving attitude towards them. Remember that they are sentient beings who want to be happy just like us, don't want to suffer just like us. And, if we want to progress along the path, we have to regard all sentient beings as precious, as, worthy of our respect, our love, and our compassion. And so we need to have patience towards them, even if they are hostile towards us, even if they seem to want to harm us, then we should try not to generate that kind of attitude towards them. And also, for following this path, we should even be grateful to them because they are offering us an opportunity to really work on our compassion and our love and our patience and our good, on these positive qualities. So a bodhisattva would actually feel, particularly positive towards such beings rather than angry, and see them as a hindrance and instead see them as helpful Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming into my life and creating problems for me, because you're really helping me to practice and progress along the path. So we should just try to make sure we maintain positive attitudes towards them, and then maybe make offerings to them. I know that's maybe I'm wrong, but in Singapore there's this practice during the Hungry Ghost Month. That's coming up soon. Is that coming up soon? People put offerings out in the street along the sidewalk, along the curb, for the hungry ghosts who are roaming around. Yeah. And actually, I'll tell you a story. I had an opportunity to do this practice myself. The first year that I was in Singapore, at that time, Amitabha Buddhist Center was on Butterfly Avenue, this little bungalow house. And people told me about the Hungry Ghost Month. And I'm not sure what I thought about it. It sounded very strange to me. But the eve of Hungry Ghost Month, meaning like the very first night of the Hungry Ghost Month, I woke up. It was around midnight. I had already been asleep, but I woke up and I just had this feeling that there were all these beings around me. I didn't see them with my eyes or hear with my ears, but it was just more of an inner sense that there were these beings around me, and they were kind of grasping at me, wanting something from me. And I also heard this word in my mind. It kept going through my mind, Kwailo, Kwailo, which I didn't know. I didn't know what it meant. But I just had the feeling, I guess because of what I'd heard from my teachers, I just thought, well, maybe these are beings that I harmed in the past. And so I have some kind of karmic connection with them. And they're coming to, get back something from me. And so remembering, what I'd heard from my teachers, I just generated loving kindness for them, and I wished them to be happy. And I started reciting Om Mani Padme Hum, and just sending this positive energy. May you be happy. May you be free of suffering. So I was just doing that for a while. I was also feeling kind of annoyed because I wanted to go back to sleep. So I was kind of hoping they would go away. And they did. So after a while, that feeling just stopped. They weren't there anymore. And I was able to go back to sleep. And the next day I met a friend, and I asked her about that word, Kwailo. And she kind of looked surprised because she said, it means foreign devil. It's Cantonese, right? Cantonese word that means foreign devil. So it's the word that was used, the negative term and derogatory term for white people, for the English people when they first came to China. And so I thought, well, that's really interesting, because I'd never heard that word. I mean, nobody would ever use that for me, I'm sure. So I thought, okay, maybe they're Cantonese ghosts who I have some karmic debt to, and they came to get something back. So anyway, yeah, when I first went to Singapore, I didn't really believe in spirits. I had a lot of doubt about spirits, even though the Tibetan lamas are always talking about them. But that experience and many other experiences I had in Singapore kind of opened my mind and made me more willing to believe that there are such things as spirits. So if we do ever have encounters with spirits or any kind of being that's kind of disturbing to us, then this is the best approach. Generate loving kindness, compassion, try not to get angry at them, have compassion for them, and just send them your positive energy. Dedicate your merit to them. Wish them to be happy. Make offerings to them. Offer them food, or just mentally. You can also just mentally offer them delicious things that will make them happy. And then the last one, number 4, is offering tormas to protectors. So in Tibetan Buddhism, there's lots of protectors, different deities like Mahakala and so on. So in Tibetan Buddhism, they sort of regularly make offerings to these protectors. But in one of the books, one of the commentaries by Geshe Chekawa, advice from a spiritual friend, he said this also includes the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, our spiritual teachers and so on. So they are also protectors. In fact, I've heard the Dalai Lama say, the 3 jewels are the best protectors, the best protection we could have. So, so it's always good to make offerings to them and request their help. Request their help to be able to do this practice of mind training, thought training, generate bodhicitta, and, you know, just keep our mind in a positive state, loving, kind, compassionate towards others as much as we can. So we do need all the help we can get. So asking, you know, the 3 jewels and any other protectors that we might have a connection with, and of course our spiritual teachers and spiritual friends and so on, and then ask for their help. We'll be able to continue doing this kind of practice and make our lives beneficial for sentient beings. And there's another book I'm looking at by Chalak Rinpoche. He was a Lama who lived in Melbourne, Australia for many years. He's passed away now. There's a book called The Practice of Lo-jong, which contains his teachings. And so he says there's a prayer that we can make when we do make offerings to protectors, 3 jewels, and so forth. He says the whole point of this practice is to be open and expansive, even to things that we might not understand. For example, you know, for many of us, these things like spirits and protectors are new. When we learn Buddhism, you know, we didn't hear about these things before, so we may not fully understand them. But he says, try to keep your mind open. And he says, make the following prayer when you do make these offerings, and imagine it has taken effect. For the act of offering Torma will reverse our tendency to be negative. Yeah, he says Torma. Yeah, this is a Tibetan term, and you've probably seen them, the Tibetan monks, you know, they make these with dough. In Tibet, they use sampa, but you can use other ingredients, even oatmeal. In the West, we can make them out of oatmeal. So you make this kind of dough and then you make it into a certain shape, something very nice and attractive and decorated. But you can, they say you can also just use biscuits, cookies, or fruit, or any kind of nice food, delicious food. And so it's like a food offering to the protectors, to the 3 jewels, and so on. So he says, this is the prayer we can make. Whatever I owe any sentient being, either living or dead, I want to settle it now for the last time. Whether I incurred these debts through deliberately manipulative acts, through an oversight, or through negligence, I want to settle them. I have no issue with you, no malice, no grudges, no problem with you whatsoever. So this is actually more to do with any kind of harmful being that we might encounter, like spirits or other kinds of beings. So understanding that we ourselves may have done harmful things in the past. And so we have the karma to have such experiences happen to us. So we need to accept that. We need to be honest and accept that we haven't always been good and virtuous and ethical, but we have done harmful things. So now this is happening to us as a result of that. And it's actually good that it's happening to us, because that means we're paying off those debts, getting clear of that karma. having less of that negative karma. And so these, these harmful beings are helping us to do that. So if we get angry, it's also helpful to realize if we get angry at them and, have thoughts of wanting to harm them and actually do harmful things to them, we're just creating more of that same kind of karma. And then we'll have more of this kind of problem in the future. So even though we may have the impulse to get angry and to do something harmful in return, we should try to resist that impulse and just remind ourselves about karma and say, no, I don't want to perpetuate this karma. I want this karma to stop here. No more of this. So I will try to be as kind and compassionate and helpful to this being as I can, not do anything harmful. And that way we end that karma. So, okay, so those are the 4 practices for transforming adverse conditions into the path. So, okay, the next main point is point number 4 of the 7 points. And this is talking about the 5 powers, but maybe it's better if I leave that for next week. We certainly don't have time to get very far into it. So I'll begin next week with that, and we can see if there's any questions from tonight's. Sorry, this morning.
That's okay. Faye has a question. Yeah. Faye,
Hi, Venerable. Hi, Venerable. Good evening to you. I was wondering if you could just recite that prayer again to repay debts to spirits. I missed it. Could you recite it again?
Okay. Well, maybe I could also type it up and send it to Guancheng, and she can put it, I don't know if that's possible, put it up on the website somewhere.
Okay.
It's a couple of lines. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, this is actually talking more about how to deal with harmful spirits.
Yeah, because I think I've had that. So.
Yeah, basically, the idea is, to wishing to clear up any debt we have to any sentient being that we may have harmed in the past. So he says, whatever I owe any sentient being, either living or dead, I want to settle it now for the last time. Whether I incurred these debts through deliberately manipulative acts, through an oversight, or through negligence, I want to settle them. I have no issue with you, no malice, no grudges, no problems with you whatsoever. So that's kind of like what I was thinking that night that I had that experience. And I'm kind of surprised at myself that I was able to have such positive thoughts and not get angry at them. But maybe because of the blessings of my teachers, having heard this kind of thing, then I was able to think that way. And it worked. I mean, they went away. And yeah, I just really felt like I kind of cleared something there. And it felt good too. When we get angry, we react with anger and want to retaliate, want to hurt the other being. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like the right way to be. On the other hand, if we can have compassion and love and kindness and patience and wish them well, it just feels much better. We'll feel more satisfied.
Thank you. I have one more quick question. I understand one of the non-virtuous acts is gossip, and I'm just trying to understand it more. Is it that we can't say anything negative about people, or is it just like we can't try and what I understood is we can't try and like shape other people's opinion of others if it's negative, but I guess I find it hard sometimes to not talk about. I mean, I don't know, like I'm not trying to gossip, but it feels like gossiping. I don't know what exactly it entails. Does that make sense? Like if something bad happened to someone, I just want to say, hey, this happened, but am I gossiping?
Okay, well, It's actually, I prefer, instead of the term gossip, I prefer the term idle talk, which is broader than gossip, because gossip is usually about people. We talk about other people. And gossip usually has the sense of something not so wholesome, not so positive. For example, I mean, it's not necessarily negative, but, you know, just talking about, oh, so-and-so is separated from so-and-so, and now they're seeing so-and-so, you know, just like who's going with who and who's not going out with who and who had a fight. And, you know, it's kind of, it's not particularly enlightening conversation, you know, it's talking in, you know, kind of trivial things that aren't really very important. And the reason it's not, you know, it's considered a non-virtuous thing is because often our motivation, the motivation behind this kind of conversation is either attachment. You know, we have attachment. We want to know who's going out with who and who's not seeing who, and so on and so on. There's a lot of that kind of attachment to things that aren't particularly important. Or this kind of talk isn't just gossip, talking about people, but can also be talking about things like fashion, food, music, movies, football, politics. I mean, almost anything that isn't really significant or spiritually nourishing. And it's a tricky one. I mean, it's most people do spend a lot of time talking about these things. But I mean, look at it for yourself. Look at your own experience of this kind of conversation. And what does it do for you? What does it do for other people? You know, does it really help you to cultivate positive qualities and compassion and wisdom and other Dharma, you know, Dharma experiences? Does it really help you in your spiritual path? Or, you know, does it cause your mind to be more disturbed, more distracted, have more attachment, or more anger? I mean, often, you know, when we're talking about people, there is anger there. Like you mentioned, critical, telling stories about who did what, you know, because we're angry at them and we want other people to be angry at them as well. So, I mean, the important thing is to just look at your own experience. Look at what that kind of conversation does for you and does for others, and try to see for yourself if it's helpful or not. And also your motivation. What is the motivation for engaging in this kind of conversation? Is it really a virtuous motivation, or something non-virtuous, or just you're bored, you know? So those are the main things. But another thing too is, oh no, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah. You know, it depends on our motivation. So when we're with Dharma friends, you know, when we're with our fellow Dharma practitioners, ideally we try to keep our conversation positive and related to Dharma, and not get into, you know, gossip and idle talk. But on the other hand, not everyone in your life is into Dharma, right?
Yeah.
You have friends, your family, and maybe they're not interested in talking about Dharma. They're interested in talking about food and clothes and fashion and politics and football and so on. So that's the tricky thing when you're with those people. So yeah, you know, if your motivation is just to keep up a good relationship with your family and your friends, make them happy, make them comfortable, and so with that motivation, engaging in these kind of conversations, you know, it's not negative. It's a positive motivation. You're not doing it out of attachment, but just out of kindness and compassion for them. So if they're talking about food, or if they're talking about, you know, politics. But on the other hand, if it starts to get negative, yeah, if they're starting to say negative things about people, then that's tricky. Ideally you try to not do that yourself. Maybe you could even excuse yourself and say, I have to go now. So that's the main thing, is to try to avoid your own speech becoming negative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because like you're saying, even listening to it could like encourage me to take part, right?
Yeah, it's very hard. And on the other hand, I mean, sometimes it is good to talk about politics. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in America right now, you probably heard. And it's good to know what's going on. You know, I mean, some people feel, well, if I'm I'm on a spiritual path, I should just not pay attention to the news and not talk about any of this, just ignore it like it's not even happening. Some people do that. But right now at Shrivasti Abbey, we're actually talking quite a lot about it, but not in a negative way. It's just because we want to know what's going on. And also we want to help people, because a lot of people are distressed. They're really distressed, they're worried, they're unhappy, they're upset about things that are going on. And so it's good to know what's going on so we can give advice to those people and how to look at these things in a Dharma way, how to use our Dharma knowledge, our Dharma practice to deal with these kind of situations. And also there are things we can do. We can get involved. For example, voting is a big thing right now, you know. So some people are trying to stop certain people from voting, not allowing them to vote. And so there are certain activities that can be done, like calling people up, you know, and encouraging them to vote, or writing them a letter and encouraging them to vote. You do have a right to vote, and please do vote. So these are active things we can do to try to help ameliorate the situation, to try to make things better. So, you know, it's not contrary to Dharma to be aware of politics, but we just have to be careful of our mind and careful of our speech, you know, to not say negative things and make, you know, stir up more negative thoughts and negative feelings, but just try to, you know, find ways. Like these teachings, transforming adverse circumstances into the path. I mean, these are really, really useful right now to deal with the current situation.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And next is Suki.
You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Very well. Okay, I have two questions, quick one. Now, the first one is about regret. You mentioned, refuge on the four opponent powers. So it is said that, mentioned that the negativities that we did are normally with regard to the three jewels or regard to other sanctions. So pertaining to that point on refuge, there's actually a part where it says that we need to like generate bodhicitta, sanction bins, on top of refuge, to be able to purify. Because that some of the negatives we did was with respect to sanction bins. Yeah. So for those who do not have religion, what do you recommend? Because you were saying that, you know, without religion you can have take refuge in the spurs, but then for sanction bins, what is the...
Well, I guess, I mean, normally the four opponent powers are explained in the context of Buddhism for someone who's following the Buddhist path, and also specifically the Mahayana path. So that's why they talk about taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. But then I think, well, what about all the people who are not Buddhist? You know, and I think they should be able to purify their negativities too, even if they're not Buddhist. So that's why I try to explain it in a way that could apply to other people, not only to Buddhists. So that's why, I mean, this is mainly just my own idea. If you're not a Buddhist, then this this particular power of reliance. The general term is actually reliance. If you're a Christian, you know, it could be relying on God or Jesus. If you're a Muslim, relying on Allah, Muhammad. So whatever your religion, you know, your objects of refuge in your own religion, you just renew your commitment to following them. And if people have no objects of refuge, not following any particular religion, then I think, well, I think everybody, most people do have certain values that they regard as important. You know, like, I want to be honest. I want to be truthful. I want to be kind. I want to be helpful. Yeah. So I'm just giving those as examples. You know, I'm hoping everybody does have some morals, some values, and so they just remind themselves of those and renew their commitment to follow those. Now, as for bodhicitta, I don't know. I just try to leave it open. You know, I just say whatever your values are. They might include compassion, kindness, non-harmfulness towards others. I mean, I think everybody does have a sense that when you hurt somebody else, it's wrong. It's wrong to hurt people, right? So just to get in touch with that, you know, and realize, yeah, I don't feel right. I don't feel good when I'm nasty, when I hurt people. So I really want to try to not do that again. I want to try to live my life so I don't hurt people. So I think it's up to each person to decide for themselves how they want to follow that particular power.
Just one more quick question. Concerning the offerings to the spirits and all that, is it okay for us to use the verses like those in the Nyone practice at the end where we make offerings to the landlord spirits and all that, the Toma offerings, for that purpose?
Yeah, that's a good example. In the Nyone practice, there's all these different offerings to, there's certain protectors that are made offerings to. And then, yeah, it also mentions local spirits, landlords. Yeah, you could do those. You could use those.
Thank you.
Okay, there's another Brittany. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Thank you, Venerable. That was wonderful. I had a question about the third point about making offerings to spirits and other beings. So the example you gave was more on the spirit side of things, but I think I heard you also say this could also be applicable to sentient beings. And I'm curious specifically, you know, I live in a downtown area. There are a lot of people experiencing homelessness, but I think with the lack of, you know, social services right now, things are changing because of COVID and also the heat. It's very hot where I live right now. I think it's really exacerbating some underlying mental illness that people have. And I've seen people get really, really aggressive. And it's something that I've been trying to kind of wrap my mind around. And so when you raised that point, I thought, maybe this is something that could be really helpful here. So thank you so much.
So it's not a question, it's just a comment. Yeah. So, I mean, we do need to protect ourselves. It doesn't mean we should just put ourselves in the way of those who are aggressive and, you know, not try to protect ourselves or run away. We can do that. But it's mainly, I mean, these whole teachings are about mind training, thought transformation. So it's mainly a question of our attitudes, you know, our thoughts and attitudes towards others, and trying as much as we can to have positive ones, compassion and loving kindness, and help where we can, but also accept we may not always be able to help. You know, if somebody's mentally ill, severely mentally ill, and they're aggressive, you know, we may not have the knowledge and the skill to be able to help them. We could try to find someone else who could help them. But otherwise, yeah, we can just send them loving energy, positive energy, but at the same time also protect yourself. Yeah. from any harm.
Okay, next is Catherine. Hold on, I need to find Catherine. Catherine, you need to unmute yourself to speak. Yeah. Okay.
Venerable, can you hear me?
Yes.
First, thank you very much for your trainings. My question is, what is the difference in the motivations or goals of a Mahayana Buddhist and a Therawada Buddhist?
Mm-hmm. Well, my understanding is in the Theravada tradition, the goal, the highest goal, the long-term goal is the attainment of nirvana, liberation, which means you free yourself from cyclic existence, suffering, the causes of suffering, ignorance, greed, hatred, all the afflictive emotions, and karma causing us to be reborn again and again. So that's my understanding. That's what their goal is, liberation. We sometimes call it self-liberation because you're liberating yourself. And in the Mahayana tradition, we also want to free ourselves from suffering and the causes of suffering, but we extend that to others. We realize others deserve to be free of suffering and we want to help them. And to be able to help them, it's not enough just to attain nirvana or liberation, because there we haven't developed ourselves to the fullest extent possible. So our goal is to become Buddha, to reach the same state the Buddha achieved, which we call full enlightenment, complete enlightenment, having all the same qualities that the Buddha had. And when we reach that state, then we're in a position where we can help all other beings be free of samsara and reach enlightenment. So that's the main difference that I understand between those two traditions. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much.
But, you know, many of the practices we do are the same, like ethical conduct, you know, keeping precepts, creating virtue, refraining from non-virtue, watching our mind with mindfulness and introspection, and not letting our mind get caught up in afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions, trying to generate positive emotions, love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and so on. So many things in common. Okay.
Sure. Anyone has any more questions? So far, I didn't see anyone recently. Yeah. Okay.
There no more questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't seem so. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's just close with the dedication of positive energy, merit. So we spent this time together. We started off with a good motivation, wanting to help all living beings. And we did some meditation, and we looked at these teachings of mind training and tried to understand them to the best of our ability so we can practice them in our lives. So all this time we've created a lot of good energy, merit, good karma. And so now let's dedicate all this merit that it will be beneficial for all living beings. So we're mentally sharing it with others. With this merit, may all living beings be free of all their suffering and the causes of suffering, like non-virtue, disturbing emotions, and so on, karma. And May all living beings have happiness and peace, and the causes of those, virtue and positive states of mind. May all living beings have all the ideal conditions in which they can learn how to free themselves from suffering, how to achieve liberation and enlightenment. So may these merits help all of us get closer to full enlightenment, Buddhahood. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Day.
Good day. Good evening.
See you next week.
See you.